Hi students. This video is to give you a few more tips and things to think about if you decide you want to write your poetry explication on those winter Sundays. Um, One of the things we talked about in class, actually I'm going to back up. I just want to remind you when you're writing a poetry explication, you're thinking about each part of the poem, and you're thinking about how each part fits into the whole effect of the poem. So one comparison I like to use to explain what a poetry explication is it's a little bit like, you know how there are some people who learn to fix cars by taking apart an engine and putting it back together? And the value of doing that is when you have to when you take it apart and put it back together, not that I've ever done it, but I assume, is that you have to think about where each part of that engine goes and how it connects to the other parts, right? Well, that's very similar to what we're doing with a poetry explication. We're not reviewing the poem, we're not doing anything like that. We're just saying this poem creates this effect, and I'm going to show you how it does it. So in those winter Sundays, in our discussion, you guys did a really good job of noticing that in the first stanza, which might be you might write your first supporting section just about the first stanza, that Hayden, the speaker, is focused very much just on the father and what Sunday mornings were like for the father and what kind of man he was and how just what kind of man he was and what did his actions, what he does on Sunday mornings, what do they show us about what kind of man he was? And then, as many of you noticed in the discussion, the second stanza, we talked about a camera, like if you were a filmmaker, how would the camera shift? In the second stanza, the camera shifts to the speaker as a boy, right? There are kind of two Haydens in this poem. There's Hayden, the adult, looking back, the speaker, and Hayden, the boy, and him like looking back at the kind of boy he was and how he was at that time in his life. So if you wrote a supporting section about the second stanza, you might be focused on what do we know about the boy here? What do we learn about him and what kind of person he was then? And then in the third stanza, as many of you noticed, we really get into the voice of the older Hayden, the speaker. And we get he remembers how he spoke to his dad, and he remembered what his dad did for him. And then there's just this final question that is so full of regret. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? I'm going to make this a little bigger. I just realized I should have done that before. So one common error people make when they write their poetry explication of those winter Sundays is they totally avoid this last question because it's hard, right? The words might be unfamiliar to you, but it's kind of the twist. It's kind of, the culmination of what he's writing about. So it's really important to explore this final question in your explication. And I just want to break it down. You can look up all these words, but as many of you said in the discussion, austere means kind of strict or unadorned. Like if you went to a convent and saw a nun's bedroom, it would be very austere. It might just have a cross on the wall and a desk and a bed. It would be very plain. Austere means plain, not decorated. Lonely, you guys know. Offices is another word we think of, right, where people work, but that's not the kind of offices he's using here. Offices here means duties, and it usually means the duties of a religious person, like a priest or a monk. So he's saying, what did I know? What did I know of love's plain and lonely duties. So one of the reasons I really want you to do a close-up on this final question in your explication is because one of the things that I think happens in these final lines is, as so many of you, really understood when we were discussing the poem, that this is a poem about him wishing he'd been kinder and more forgiving of his father and more appreciative, right? But I think in these final lines, Hayden also is saying, I just didn't understand love. I thought love was like, the dad on the Cosby Show coming in and hugging his son and saying, you can do it. And I believe in you and follow your dreams or whatever, like all that mushy stuff, we expect our parents to do. Right. And here he's saying, no, that's nice when that kind of love happens. But love is also often getting up early in the morning to warm up your house for your kids. And it can be lonely to be up in the cold at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. Or love is, waking up at 3 a.m. to drive your girlfriend to the airport because her grandmother died and she needs to get on a plane, right? We often think of love as hugs and Valentines and, red roses. But the speaker in this poem is saying, no, maybe that's part of it, but love can be really plain, and it can be, the acts of love can be devotional, like a priest's acts, right? And I couldn't even recognize them because I was so young. I didn't see that these ordinary things like shining my shoes and, made banked fires blaze. So that was a line that was confusing to a lot of you in the Think Aloud. A banked fire is a fire that's gone out. Maybe if you've ever gone camping, you've had this experience. The fire seems to have gone out, but if you stir it, it comes to life again. A banked fire is a fire that's maybe got some embers underneath and you got to stir it up to get it going. That's what the dad was doing in the morning. He got up and maybe the fire in the wood burning stove had gone out during the night. He stirred it up and got it going again to warm up the house. So if you write about this poem, please don't avoid that last question. It's so rich. It has so much to offer all of us as readers and humans. And I hope what I said about it helps you think about it a little bit more and helps you think about what you might say about it in explication. All right, let me know if you have any questions.